So happy festivities, everyone. It's such a wonderful time of the year to have a conversation on the very new and very beautiful table book by the author, academician, historian, and chairperson, Draupadi Singh Trust, Neera ji. The book connecting with the Mahabharata, its history, geography, archaeology, culture, art. It has been published by Garuda Prakashan recently, and we are going to talk about, we're really privileged to talk about it online today. So with this, I really welcome Neera ji on our 108th episode under Trends Literature Series.
What a lovely number, 108.
Thank you so much. You think so?
What a lovely number. I think it's so suitable to Mahabharata.
Oh, lovely. That's such an auspicious thing to say.
Because 108 is it's a very auspicious number.
So, ma'am, I'll delve into the conversation immediately.
Right.
You mentioned in the beginning of the wonderfully illustrated coffee table book, and I must show it to everyone.
Yeah.
See how beautiful this book is. It looks
absolutely I'm also gorgeous. Having a copy here, and there is one behind me, if you can see.
I have only one copy, so I can only show one.
Right? Okay, no, I have one behind me always in my office. Yes, please.
So, you mentioned, as I just said, that in the beginning of the book, it's such a beautifully illustrated copy book, that considering the centuries of misinterpretations and misconceptions about our sacred historical texts, the significance of knowing and connecting with Mahabharata becomes really relevant. So I would really request you to please throw some light on this very, very important statement of yours in the beginning of the book.
That is the most critical, and I'm glad you've started with that one. You see, what has happened is over a period of time, almost about 1,000 years, we have been subjugated by other people. We have been invaded, we have been destroyed. The biggest harm has been on our education system. The result has been that in our society in India, in the last 200 odd or maybe more years, we are being taught, we are told that Ramayana and Mahabharata are mere kavya. They are just mythologies. I don't know how the word mythology came, because our rishis never wrote fiction. So I'll say 1.1 at a time. Secondly, in foreign countries, our books of sacred itihas are taught as religion and mythology. So over a period of time, we have been brainwashed into thinking that these are not actual historical texts. And why? The reason I've given you, these are the two main reasons where we have been completely disconnected with our itihasa. Now, if you go back in time, you will realize in ancient times, there was no textbooks, there was no printing press. The method of dissemination of our knowledge, itihas and Google and social sciences and other aspects of life, value systems, which we actually term as Dharma. See, Dharma actually means principles of life. All that was done through through verbal dissemination. So that system completely was destroyed. Now, on the other hand, since we did not have this, when the foreigners came, two very important things happened, one in the medieval period and one in the colonial period. If you actually open the book Mahabharata, the first chapter itself, Vedavyasa says this is itihasa, and this is itihasa of Vijay, of victory. And if you will notice, in Ramayana, each of these sections are called Kand. There's Ayodhya Kand, there's a Kishkinda Kand, there's a different Lanka Kand, etc., etc. Okay. Here you will see each section, which is divided into 18, is called Parva.
Yes.
Now, Parva means basically celebration. It also means living things, like, we have to enjoy life. We have to understand the value systems and retain those value systems. And we can do Parva, we can do celebrate when there is happiness. So what happened is that since the book says itihasa, so this concept that this is not itihasa could not be understood by the foreigners. For them, they were these just some fairy tales. So what happened in medieval time? The first translation of this largest epic of the world, it is like, Rama, it is 4 times bigger than the Ramayana also.
So
It's
right.
1 lakh verses. So what happened is that Akbar got very much interested in our books of knowledge and our past, and he wanted to learn. And since he was not so well educated, he hired scholars. So there were about 5 scholars of Sanskrit, and some of them were my ancestors, 5 scholars of Persian, and some artists. He got them. And he translated this book, but he only selected things which are appealing to an invader, to a person who wants to conquer, and that is the war. He termed that book, he named it Rizm-nama. Now, Rizm-nama means the book of war. This book is now positioned in the Jaipur Museum, the City Palace Museum of Jaipur. Once this got translated, it became so popular that, and he distributed these, one book it was for him, then he made many copies and distributed to the nobles, to his sons, to many people. And in Agra, there's a Fatehpur Sikri where he had a Ibadat Khana. It became a factory of translating this book of war. It became very interesting. The tag of this book came to be known as Book of War. That means hamare aksar you will listen to people saying Mahabharata ho jayegi. So they started linking the book. If you analyze the book right in the beginning in Adipar, it is very clearly mentioned that there are just about 8,800 verses which deal with the Vijaya part of it, that is the war part of it, the Dharma of Vijaya over Adharma. There are 24,000 verses which are actually talking about the Bharatvansh. Now, if you will remember, there are different types of dynasties. The main were the Bharatvansh, but beyond Bharatvansh, there were others also. Since the main storyline revolves around the dispute between the Bharatvansh, it was 24,000. Then there are subtales and other tales related to other kingdoms and other places, which are amounting to the balance, and the Bhagavad is also a part of it. So together it is 1 lakh verses, out of which only not even 10% is related to war, but it is known as war. Then what happened later on? So this became infamous. Very, very fortunately for us, the introduction to this book, Rizm-nama, very clearly says, Badauni and Abul Fazl, the 2 scholars of Akbar, that Akbar wanted to translate this book into Persian with illustrations and showing a lot of war scenes, etc., because this book is a very, very sacred book of the Hindus. They read it every day in every home. So how precious this book was, the knowledge of this book was. Now, this book suddenly became infamous. So that tag is still today. आप किसी से भी पूछो, they will say घर में महाभारत नहीं रखनी है. Why? Because लड़ाई हो जाएगी. It is लड़ाई की किताब. Now let us compare Ramayana and Mahabharata. Nobody ever says Ramayana ho jayegi because it was translated by Akbar, but the name remained Ramayana. Now what happens is there is a 40-day war in Ramayana. And again, it revolves about establishing Dharma. And of course, it was a different Dharma, that a woman had been, abducted, etc., etc. And here also it was related to Dharma of a different nature, a political issue. So 40 days war, we don't say Ramayana ho jayegi, but 18 days war. And in this 18 days war, we get something called the most valuable knowledge of this earth, I would call it the Bhagavad Gita, which is a manual of life. So these misperceptions that had been created, because the foreigners, that is, when the colonials came, something more happened. As I said, that they started teaching it only as kavya in all, whatever, in the universities, and as a book of philosophy, but completely diluting the history. I mean, just dissociating the historical part of it, because they did not understand the methodology of our seers, how to write history. Our history was written through tales, through stories, because they had to disseminate to the larger audience verbally. And when they're telling stories of different strata of life, whether it is the kings or it is the armed public, they are actually giving us a complete reflection. So the book Mahabharata actually is not only itihas, it mentions each and every geographical boundaries of Jambu Deepa. It mentions other deeps, that people who came from other deep, that is the continent deep, they would call it the continent. So I started with this because the book, I feel, my work started almost 20 years ago from the birthplace of Draupadi. So this methodology, they did not understand. For them, it was only dates. There was a king, the king did this, king did that, king did that. That is history. For us, history is not that. For us, history is the whole society, what the kings are doing, what are the value systems, what are the other people, how they are affected, etc. So you will find, because of the misunderstanding of the methodology, we were unable. We did not write that so-and-so was born on this date and he rolled from this date to this date and he did these reforms and he did these reforms. That was not what our ancestors, because our ancestors wanted to connect us to life, to what is happening, what decisions, what policies, what dharma, that is policies, etc. So these are the main reasons why I wanted to stress that I'm writing this book to reconnect people to their itihas through their geography, as well as through archaeology and other means, which is art, which is epigraphy, that is inscriptions, etc. So I think I would wait for the next question, because this...
Yes, ma'am. 20 years of hard work compiled into such a beautiful book, ma'am. Very, very, I must congratulate you. And you've rightly said that Mahabharata, it really forms the soul of a philosophy and value systems of our lives. You know, how does the book, which you have so beautifully compiled and which is such a treat to one's eye, bring together? I know that's again a very profound question. Bring together the time, place, people in single place.
Yes, history, itihas actually means place, time, people, right? Through this book, what we have also shown, we have shown the geographical span. We have given the storyline in the introduction, that what is the storyline. And while giving the storyline, we have sort of given the highlights of the story, because it is very difficult to cover 1 lakh verses. So what we did was, we wanted to introduce people also to the architecture, because there is a lot of misunderstanding that was created, that which is the first chapter, which is the second chapter. It is like very confusing. But the fact of the matter is, we start from Adi Parva and we end in Swarga Arohan Parva. So I have also, right in the beginning, while giving the storyline, then told the people this is the architecture, and in brief, each parva, what does it contain, how many sub-parvas, how many subsections, and basic outline of each of them that I have given. So I have connected that, and anybody interested can actually see and read. Now, interesting is, you can read one parva, you can read other parvas, but it would be interesting to read right from Adi Parva to the Swarga Arohan Parva to understand the whole idea about the Dwapar Yuga. Here, I would like to also tell you the timeline now. See, our history is so deep embedded that our seers wanted to, today when we go to a college or school, we are taught history. So what are we taught? We are saying ancient history, medieval history, and modern history. Now, their ancient history starts from somewhere around the time of, Buddha and all that, things like that. And little bit, they give you 2-3 lines, maybe one paragraph on Indus Valley civilization, presuming that, yes, something is there. Because they have not understood that what was this Vedic civilization. So what our seers did in terms of timeline, they divided our past history, our history right from today, today's Kali Yuga, into main sections, which was the Satyug or the Vedic period. Then the Treta Yuga. Treta is third from now. Like today, first is Kali Yuga, Then Dwapar is second and Treta is third. So third is Treta Yuga. Then the Dwapar Yuga. And then this. And in each, they have highlighted the main figures and the main personalities that went into molding the history and the philosophy. You see, our philosophy is developed over a period of time. So what was the value of, during the Treta, it was Ram dominating because he had to establish the Dharma. He had to establish certain dharmas and principles. When it comes to Krishna, that is the Dwapar, again, it was all the, Vedic was the purest age. Then there was some, gradually as man became greedy, man started, becoming attached to property and attached to material things and attached to power. So even Ravan's fight was more of power. He wanted to control Ram through, and he used Sita, again here in the same story. So by the time we come to Dwapar, things had gone very bad. And so again, to reestablish Dharma, a very, very big battle had to take, a war had to take place. And so the timeline of ours is Vedic, Kali Yuga, that Vedic is also Satyug, Treta, Dwapar, and Kali Yuga. So we are now in Kali Yuga. But unfortunately, we are only taught Kali Yuga. We are not taught anything beyond because, as I said, they don't understand how deep it is. And why this has happened is also, let's just to say in a few words. See, when the colonials came here and they saw all these texts, for them, it was a prefixed date of Christ and the earth, beginning of the earth, 4000 BC. Okay, so they had to fix everything, whatever they want to find out, into 4000 BC. And they wanted to show the superiority of their race, that either on us or Africa. You see the same story is in Africa also. So they fixed the 4000 and they wanted to curtail everything into that 4000, and anything beyond that, proto-history, prehistory. In fact, they don't even call it history. They just call it some sort of so right from the age of tools, Paleolithic and all, they go directly into teaching us about the Kali Yuga, which is absolutely absurd, So timeline ours is that we believe in the yugas, and those yugas, as I have just defined, we are in the Kali Yuga. As per our research, the Kali Yuga, or as per the majority opinion, there are almost, there are thousands of inscriptions. And what they did was, unfortunately, that almost 3000 inscriptions, because they did not coincide with the dates that they had, and those inscriptions had they just said they are not authentic. They are all fake. Now, how could somebody create a fake inscription 3000 years ago, or 2000 years ago, or 5000 years ago? I don't know. As if they were waiting for the Britishers to come and say that. So anyway, the fact of the matter is that everything was documented, not only in inscriptions, because in inscriptions we find mention of the Ramayana, we mention the characters of Ramayana, of Mahabharata, and of our, like Delhi has a huge number of inscriptions, Delhi, the Indraprastha. So the timeline of, if you would want to know that how our structure was, aapko choti si yaad bata do that we have something called the Sankalpa Mantra. So whenever you do a puja, you start with Bharat, Kali Yuge, Varakalpe, Kali Yuge, Jambu Deepe, Bharat Varshe, then you give your Jaga ka naam, then place ka name, then you give your date, you give your ancestor's name, you give your goth. So we actually had developed a system of noting down the date of every event. And these dates are there in the inscriptions.
So fantastic.
So that is how we know the date. And as far as the date of the war is concerned, I can maybe take it on later, because that's the very critical question where we are always, there's a question mark on our history.
Very well described, ma'am. And definitely, your book, everyone needs to read. I must tell everyone that it's also been endorsed by Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar ji. And he's also said that, the authors have really made the greatest ever epic more real and engaging for the modern generation by placing the essence of the epic in the context of history, geography, archaeology, culture, and art. He said it so well, and he describes the book absolutely in few words, but he said it all. So do you think the book will really connect and promote? You really want to promote the greatest epic in the younger generation, as he
You
says
see,
that the
how does
modern.
the younger generation connect? They connect with tangible things, unfortunately. 99% of our today's youth, not only youth, even people who are in the civil services, people who are in the general life, businessmen, they want to see tangible things. So what I did was, I took out the epigraphics, that is all tangible, you can feel them. Then there is something very, very interesting which people will really appreciate, is the art through which our storyline of the Ramayana and Mahabharata, especially Mahabharata, has continued to be told on stones, on paintings, on different, art forms. So I have only covered something which is related to the tangible. I have not taken the intangible like the dance forms and all, because that would have become really this thing. But tangibly, if you want to connect, when they see that the oldest art piece is from Mohenjo-daro, which we already know is about 4,000 years ago, where they show Balram and Krishna pulling a tree. Then we have Rath on rock paintings of Rath. And fortunately for us, very recently, just a few years ago, I think in 2017 or 18, yeah, the Archaeological Survey of India did an excavation in the place which was known as the Kuru Mahajanpada, whose capital was Hastinapur, which is in Meerut. They found a rath. They found a rath on which one person can move, and the warfare. They found a lot of weapons. They found female warriors, carcasses of female warriors. So I think people will connect to this on seeing tangible things. Secondly, what we are trying to do, that once we have given the geography, now in terms of geography, something very interesting, always people will say and question, oh, wherever we go, we see there's Ram had come here, or Krishna had come here, or Arjun did this, or Draupadi ka rasoi hai, Sita ka rasoi hai. Answer one simple question. Think about it logically. For 12 years, the Pandavas were banished into the jungles.
Forests, yeah.
They went from forest to forest. Now, when they're going from forest to forest or place to place, are they not touching the length and breadth of the country? 12 years is not a small time. So wherever the memory has remained, many of the memories have been wiped out. Many of the places, the remains have been wiped out. If I tell you, there were two very big temples in Purana Kila, which is on Mathura Road in Delhi, which is actually now by the grace of the Britishers, that little area is now called Indraprasth, whereas Indraprasth was very huge. I have also done the boundary wall of, the outer skirts of Indraprasth, stretching from, because we have found inscriptions in Narayana, in Haryana, Sonipat, we have information. So all these, the 5 places that were given. So once we connect people to this on a physical level, the places, very interestingly, the main places that are mentioned, the kingdoms, say the Panchal Desh Rajdhani was Kampilya. Now, Kampilya still exists from thousands of years by the same name. Hastinapur still exists by thousands of years, still named. Dwarka still exists. Mathura, Vrindavan. In Bihar, we have the other kingdoms, so all these Jarasandh kingdom. So the point is this, that since we have places which are mentioned in the epic still existing, and we have art pieces. Of course, the largest temple of Mahabharata storyline is in Cambodia. We all know about Angkor Wat. But in India, in South India, in West India, see, the north was completely destroyed. All temples, in my place, Kampilya, there was a huge temple which talked about Ganga from the time of Ganga Avtaran, which is talking about Shiva's time. But they have been destroyed. But our effort is to connect people to the art. When they see the art form and they see the date, how from centuries people are telling the story, then they see the inscriptions, then they see the geographic. We have given a graphical description of the journeys taken by Arjun, the journey taken by Krishna from Dwarka to Hastinapur, and the different Digvijays, because the kings had this habit of doing Digvijays, that after they have crowned themselves king, they will go around and meet others and tell them to be friends with us or we will conquer you. So that was the Digvijay journeys. All this have been graphically mentioned. So today's people, today's generation, when they see these graphical and then the names of the places which are mentioned in the thing are given, and then they connect. So that is how want to connect is to make them see the tangible. Of course, we have other plans based on this that we are already talking to the government of reviving some of the historical places on these places.
Very, very noble work being done by you, ma'am, and the members of your team, and you as the chairperson of Draupadi Dream Trust. I must tell everyone has been doing a great work. This trust, I think, has been doing a great work for the last so many years. And 20 years, the compilation is there in front of you, this book.
Yeah. We are 20 years old.
Pardon me?
20 years.
20 years.
Yeah, on 15 December 2022, we enter the 20th year.
Imagine. Such a valuable book this will be for us, the future generation and the current generation. Before I let Dia take over the further questions, I'll request everyone to, whosoever wants to ask a question directly at the end of our conversation, please free to do that, and please send us a message so that we can take you up at the end of the conversation. Yes, Dia.
Yes, ma'am. So we were talking about our everybody's connection to their history and how they connect. And connecting to Mahabharata inspires anybody who cherishes their history and culture and their dharma. And the same thing goes for Ramayana. And your book is such a great way to know so much about our own history. So do you think that we are going to be looking at a coffee table book for Ramayana now?
Oh, yes. My book on Ayodhya is there, but now that you called Ramayana, I think I should rename it Ramayana. And yes, just one more thing I actually missed out, and I think it is very important, very critical for people to know the meaning of the word Mahabharat. Because as I said, they say Mahabharat ho jayegi. Ramayana, we know it is basically all around Ram. But Mahabharat means the tales, the history through tales of the geography of a period that was beyond the Bharatvansh also. So it is not only the story of Bharatvansh, but the greater, the Virat, the Vishal Bharat. Maha means Vishal, Virat Bharat. That means beyond, because everybody followed a dharma called Sanatan Dharma. And what is Sanatan Dharma? Sanatan Dharma is dharma that its principles have been based through Prakriti. Our Sanskriti arose from Prakriti, which was followed all over. Yes, I would definitely be working on Ramayana. I'm already working on Ayodhya per se, but it has to obviously go beyond, because I must also share that Kampilya, where I come from, my ancestral place, in ancient Vedic times, it was a very large samrajya, which is mentioned in Vedas and mentioned in the Ramayana also, that its boundaries stretched from Ayodhya, that is from Saket, till Bias, which is in Punjab, during the time of King Sudas. This is most ancient times I'm talking about. So definitely, and another important thing is that the kings of Kampilya, at that time, it was basically the whole kingdom was known as Kampilya, before it became the Rajdhani of Panchal, were the gurus of the kings of Mithila and Ayodhya. So for me, doing Ramayana would be absolutely honor. I've already started the work.
Ma'am, it would be an honor for us to read the book too, written by somebody who has such wealth of knowledge. Ma'am, the original narrative, the original compilation of verses, as you mentioned, was Jaya, which had 8,800 verses.
No. Original was not Jaya. The Adi Parva says that this book has 8,800 verses, which are talking about the Jaya part of it. And they are very difficult verses, and you have to be very careful while interpreting them. And there are 24,000 verses by the same author, Ved Vyasa, which talk about only the Bharatvansha clan. And then there are other verses which talk about the larger Jambudeep itihasa and geography, including the Bhagavata, that is about the Krishna story. So it's not a separate section per se. In fact, one foreigner tried to take out those 8,000 verses to create a separate Bharatvansha book, but Jaya book, but it's not possible because they're all embedded. You have to sieve them.
Right. Okay. Thank God it's clear now. Do you think as the years go on, Mahabharata is open to even more interpretations and discoveries? Do you think there is room to discover even more?
There is a great deal of room to rediscover, I would say not discover, rediscovers the ancient landmarks. You see, I've covered the geospatial landmarks. Now, unless you connect to a geospatial landmark, it becomes very tough for you to actually connect to the itihas of the past. So yes, we are rediscovering, like in 1950s early. So Professor B.B. Lal started his journey from Hastinapur to know about the Mahabharata epic, and he wanted to know whether it is truth or not. And he found certain cultural remains which are linking all the places linked to Mahabharata to a particular material culture. So this helped him to take it forward. Yes, definitely it needs see, the only rediscovery, or I would say, is places which have been completely destroyed and they need to be recreated. Second part is that we have to do a little more work, which I'm working for almost now 10 years on the exact dates of the war. So we have worked with international scholars who are absolutely fantastic knowledge of Ramayana and Mahabharata, as well as they are, they are astrophysicists. So through astronomical dating, you see, we have the dates of Krishna's birth, we have the date of Ram's birth, and we celebrate. But today's youth wants to know exact dates. So we are working on astronomical dating. Phenomenal astronomical nakshatra descriptions are given and all the major events that have happened. So once you link them on a proper software, which will tell you the date, take you back, we have got a date of 3067 as the date of the war. So definitely the discovery, I would not say, because we already know it is there. I mean, we don't have to discover, we have to reclaim and rediscover the history and disseminate that to the people to be proud how deep their roots are. And this misperception about Dharma war. Dharma means rules of governance. Duryodhan was very jealous. You see, I must tell you why the war happened. It would be interesting for the if you have the time. If you have the time,
please.
Yeah.
That would be such a
The day we knew that from childhood, Duryodhan's father was not the actual king. He was a caretaker king because he was the king. The rules were that you have to have certain capabilities in order to become the king. Now, because of his blindness, he was not capable of becoming a king. So his second brother, Pandu, was made the king. So technically, as per rules of the government, then Pandu was the king. But since Pandu had an early death, his elder brother was given charge as the caretaker king. So Duryodhan actually technically had no right over the throne. But from child, the father was like feeling, that I should have been the king because I'm the eldest. Even the son got developed those activities. And then his mama came from Gandhar, who sort of incited him. So from childhood, he had the desire, he had this thing that I'm supposed to be the king. So he hated the Pandavas. The crux, and also, that when the competition took place on who should be king between Yudhishthir and Duryodhan, Yudhishthir won and Duryodhan lost. That's the time the Lakshagraha happened, if you remember, that he tried to burn them all, but they escaped and they went to Panchal Desh. The moment Panchal king, this Arjun won it, Another misperception, people think that usne kaha bheek de do, to usne bheek le liya. It's not that. There was a pratha that one woman can marry more than one in the same family. So it took 10 days of decision of the leading rishis of that time for Draupadi to accept. Yes, it is right. And Krishna's first entry comes at Kampilya after he has left Mathura and moved to Dwarka. The first time he enters in this whole storyline is at the Swayamvar. So what happened the moment they got married, the 5 Pandavas accepted, Draupadi accepted the 5 Pandavas. The Duryodhan as well, his father came, realized that first of all, my son is not very much of a Yodha. The Pandavas would have defeated them, but we have a great army. But here, they've got the backing of a Panchal kingdom, which was the most powerful kingdom after the Kuru kingdom. And the Pandavas are united. So there is no way of disuniting the Pandavas. There is a backing. So then he calls them and he decides to divide the kingdom. And then Indraprastha is created, giving them Sonipat, Panipat, Bagpat, Tilpat, and this area called Khandaprasth, because this was the area where Khand used to grow, and it is called Indraprastha. So the reason was that Dhritarashtra realized that if I do not divide the kingdom now, my son will not get anything. But when they saw the grandeur and the hard work of the Pandavas, Duryodhan wanted to grab it at any cost. And what do? When they are invited for the crowning ceremony, it is important for you all to know this. When they invited them for the crowning ceremony, 100 kings had come from across Jambudweep and beyond Jambudweep and there was a huge yajna, Raj Abhishek. So the queen, that is Draupadi, would be too busy sitting with the Havan with her husband, managing the VIPs. Then she would not be taking her Deva around to see the palace. So when Duryodhan fell, there was no Draupadi there. She has the book. This incident is described in the Sabha Parv, where the making of Indraprastha is said and this crowning ceremony is happening. Draupadi, there is no mention at all in the book that Draupadi was present and she laughed. So this whole one Garant kahani jo baad mein banai gayi hai, and in those days people never wore sari. So pulling the sari and showing ke Jeer Haran, it's all absolutely too much of freedom of the creativity. He just touched her dupatta because they used to wear long skirt, choli and dupatta. Anyway, so the point is, the reason why the war happened was the Irsha and the ambition, political power ambition of Duryodhan, which made this war happen. Because till the end, Krishna tried to stop the war. So nothing to do with Draupadi, nothing to do with Maharani Draupadi. I call her Maharani Draupadi because she was the first queen of Indraprastha when it was created. So many misperceptions have been created about this book, about this, itihas.
That is so enlightening. I think people around me and me, including me, I have never exactly been clear of what exactly happened in the Mahabharata. And I know, as a matter of fact, like you mentioned, there are so many misconceptions that surround it. So definitely very excited to be finishing this book. It in itself is, there's so much knowledge in it that it's a beautiful book that every single person here needs to read. So please enlighten us more about the process of writing this book and the absolute main motive with which you put the book together.
See, the process frankly started when 20 years ago, I had a very severe car accident and I went to Kampilya to do puja to my Kuldevi. So we have this, anybody who's doing puja will know there is this Kampil Vasini Devi Mandir, which is the only mandir which is in our place. It's a Yajurveda mantra which starts with Amba Amba Ambalike and it ends with Subhadrani Kampilya Vasini. So I went to do the puja and I saw a pathetic state of a nationally protected site under Archaeological Survey of India, which is called the birthplace of Draupadi. It is mentioned in gazettes, it is mentioned everywhere, and it is mentioned in ASI International. And it was in absolute dirt, like kichad, what we call in Hindi. And I said, my God, people are not aware that this is such an important sacred place. So I wanted to understand about Draupadi. In order to understand this whole process of Draupadi, because she has always been my inspiration from childhood, my grandmother used to tell me tales. I wanted to understand. So when I went deeper and I started reading books on Mahabharata, talking to historians on Mahabharata, as you said in the beginning, people said this is mythology. There is no proof that this is a true history and things like that. And that's what made me more determined. I said, Hamare sadiyon se, like from ages we have been taught this is history. How come people are not knowing? And then I came to know when I studied, when I researched, that why this misperception has been created in the books in colleges, and it's not even taught in colleges. It's taught as just Sanskrit literature and kavya and philosophy in another department. And the Britishers are teaching it as some religion. India doesn't have something called religion. We have, our Sanskriti is based on spirituality, and we have panths. We have different panths, but it's all under the Sanatan concept of principles of life. So then I started researching and I started doing work. And as I mentioned, Professor Lal, in 2003, I started this work. In 2008, beginning, I met Professor B.B. Lal at Hastinapur, where I was asked to give a talk on Kampilya, the history of Kampilya and the importance of Kampilya. And then started another journey, and my research became wider because archaeology came into the picture. And so I started understanding from archaeology. Then I touched upon art and epigraphy and different aspects. And that's how this journey, and we did 8 international conferences. I have published earlier also Mahabharata, its antiquity, its historicity and impact on society. Then we did a complete session of 3 days on Mahabharata Manthan, because that Manthan was basically to prove its historicity and historiography, where we got historians to tell us why this is not history, why you cannot say this is like itihas. So they were absolutely, flawed because they didn't understand what I was talking. And then gradually in 3 days, we were able to prove that it is history, because we have used the methodology of history, which is so different from what the methodology of the foreigners was. And we are so tuned to the foreigners now that we don't even go back and look into the methodology of how our research was done, how our rishis did this. And so that journey took me. And then after the Manthan, we did Indraprastha. So I have a book on Indraprastha revisited. Then we did Panchal. So I took up sections so that I could gather more and more information. Then we did Draupadi and her Panchala. That book was launched by Aparna Mukherjee. Things like that, and this is how, my search went on. And in 2012, what I did was, for the first time, I actually put up an exhibition on the places of Mahabharata, the art of Mahabharata, the timeline of Mahabharata through art, the places that still exist from which I mentioned in the epic, and its wider connectivity to the Southeast Asia, because Jambu Deep was basically Southeast Asia. Jambu Deep consisted of Southeast Asia. So this journey went on and on. And then I said that I was putting the things together, and then sieving all this work of 20 years was very tough. So much important artworks and so much important epigraphic material has been left out. But as you said, the journey, the concept started from there, that people have to be connected to the history to know history. And to know history, they have to know the geography, and they also have to know where we have lost all the material that has gone. So unless that happens, like we have taken out inscriptions of Purana Kila, all the Mandir inscriptions and all the other inscriptions, even during Sultanate, there are a lot of inscriptions of Purana Kila, which says so-and-so Seth started this Bauli for the public, and the date is given, and it's given in Indraprastha. So we have to, this whole research has been, as I said, almost 20 years, but specifically focused on this book, I worked for 12 years. After that exhibition, I wanted to document all this gradually and gather more and more information. So I was putting that information together, then gradually collecting more information, and that's how the journey started.
Fantastic, ma'am. And as it is also said in the book, and I read the comments, that Mahabharata is a repository of the knowledge about Dharma, Earth, Kama, and Moksha. And we definitely need to maintain our historical identity and build a narrative around it. And it's a fantastic book. I have few questions which I'd like to take up, and maybe
Just can I say one more thing before you
Sure,
start the
sure,
question?
please.
I think it will excite people to ask questions. Last chapter of this book, I mentioned something very, very interesting, which is related to current times. Because history, if you do not learn from history, you're bound to repeat history. If our people had been taught Mahabharata and the result of dividing Kuru Mahajanpada into Indraprastha and Kuru Mahajanpada into Hastinapur, what happened after the Indraprastha was created? Was there peace between? Because Dhritarashtra says, I want peace between brothers. I want that they should both live together separately, but peacefully, happily, friendly. Did it happen? No. It created worse situation. That means the war started after the grandeur of Indraprastha became prominent. Today, what we are seeing, we divided our country into India, Pakistan. What has happened after the division? How many disputes have taken? How much of destruction has happened? Has there been peace by dividing the country? Had they learned this lesson, never would have divided our country. We would have found other means to find a peaceful resolution to live together.
So very right. There is a question already, and this is from Mrs. Saroj Sehgal, and she wanted to ask, your books, this book and other books too, they aim to familiarize people with the historicity of the great epic. But there are multiple books on Mahabharata. So how do you think your book is different? I know already, and you've already been through this conversation, that your book is very, very different. From you as an author, how do you find your book to be different from multiple books on Mahabharata?
Okay, so I'll name a few prominent books, and that will give you an intake into what it is about. Dr. Bibek Debroy, who stood at the moment the chairman of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Committee, a great Sanskrit scholar, has translated the whole Mahabharata, but he has not translated the original Mahabharata, which is the Ved Vyasa's Mahabharata. He has translated the critical edition, and critical edition has completely diluted the actual storyline. Okay, so there's no translation that I have done of any book. Number two, there is translation by Ganguly of the whole book. Now, today we are finding many of the people who have translated the Mahabharata have actually made mistakes in understanding the shlokas. So as I said, Ved Vyas says in the beginning that there are certain shlokas which are very difficult to interpret, and you have to be very careful and be thoughtful and understand the reference to context, and then you analyze, because in Sanskrit there are certain words which have double meaning also, So mine is neither a translation, mine is neither a complete storyline. There is a book, very famous book, The Difficulty of Being Good, by one Gurcharan Das. He has taken a takeoff on Mahabharata. He has tried to show that people who were very good were finding life very difficult. So people have taken different aspects. Kavita Sharma has written a book, The Queens of Mahabharata. She's taken the women in Mahabharata. So different people have taken the storyline as it is. Nobody has talked about the history and the historicity of the book. Nobody has actually given a geographical span of the book. Nobody has ever tried to analyze the art timeline through art. As I said, I go back to 4,000 years and I take from every century the art forms that are talking about the story of Mahabharata. So this is a completely different takeoff, because I want to connect people. I want people to see the facts. I don't want people to go into philosophy and into, imaginative stories. It's fine. That's okay for literature. Mine is not literature.
And there's a question from Babita Batra, and very, very relevant today. Because being the Dashera, so happy Dashera to everyone. She wanted to ask, is Ramayana and Mahabharata two chapters of the same story?
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. in Ramayana, of course, Dharma is common in every age. Even today, Dharma is common. If you're working in an institution, you have to follow the rules and regulations of that institution. So that is your Dharma. Your Dharma towards your mother, your Dharma towards your father, Dharma, etc., of different people. Dharma towards your employees, Dharma towards your seniors, and your Dharma towards your friends, etc. So there are certain principles. The Ramayana story was basically about the Dharma towards a woman, how a woman can be sort of abducted. Okay. In Mahabharata, it was about the Dharma of governance, that rules have been laid who should be king. So why you're wanting to be king? And the Dharma that you said, the Kam, Lobh, Moksha, etc., all these five, this thing. Duryodhan did not. So all types of dharma, there only one dharma was broken by a very learned king called Ravan. He was a very learned king. He wrote the Shivka, Stuti, and he was a knowledge of Vedas, everything. But he forgot the dharma that if he wants to show his superiority, he should not abduct a woman. But one thing you will remember, very, very credible about Ravan, I see, he is constantly asking Sita's permission to touch her. He will not touch her. He says, मैं आपको छूऊंगा नहीं जब तक आप मुझे permission नहीं दोगे. But he did violate one dharma, that he should not use a woman as an object for his political gains. Here, multiple dharmas were broken. It was not only one dharma. And so if you will see, many people criticize Sri Krishna that you also broke a dharma. He says, yes, sometimes wish काटने के लिए wish पिलाना पड़ता है. And so he used that. See, the strategies of Krishna were related to the times of Dwapar, and almost we were on the edge of Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga had come. Kali Yuga means that everybody will be completely, they will not follow any rules, which was getting too much. So they are not the same story. They are neither the story is same, neither the backdrop is same, and neither the fight for Dharma is on a similar plane. Ramayana is on a specific thing. Mahabharata is on a larger issue. And when the larger issue is there, that's why we have the Bhagavad Gita. We have no such document from the Ramayana. We have the Bhagavad Gita, which is a manual of life. It tells you what life is. Ramayana doesn't tell you that. Ramayana tells you, you have done adharma and you have to be defeated.
Right, ma'am. We have our last question from Miss Asha Daima, who is a history educator. She asks, as a history teacher, I want to give my students experiential learning about Mahabharata beyond the content in the books. That is, through artifacts and other similar remains they can have access to. So please advise where I can take them to, some museum site, temple, any place that would give them an insight into the time and story of Mahabharata.
It is very sad to say that Delhi, being the place for which the whole Yuddha happened, because Delhi was the reason, Indraprasth was the reason why the Dharma happened, completely denuded of all these things. Just a few inscriptions are there. And which we are trying to place. But actually, if you want to take your children, go to South India. There's a Hoysala temple, which tells you the whole story of the place. Then, of course, if you can afford, you can take them to Cambodia. Then, very importantly, my book also covers a lot of art. So you can take them to museums and tell them to take out the art which depicts Ramayana and Mahabharata. You can take them to Kurukshetra, where Kurukshetra has an experiential museum, the Krishna Museum, which also depicts different timelines. It also depicts the story. And then there is the other state museum, also the Science Museum, which also tells you a lot about and it's all focused on the period of Dwapar. So that is the story which is narrated in the Mahabharata. So she can take them to Kurukshetra, which is the best place to go in the nearby vicinity. But for larger understanding, Cambodia, South Indian temples, and there are many places across India where you can go to, and it's all mentioned in my book. If you can just go through the book, we have mentioned a lot of these things.
Such a wonderful conversation. Unfortunately, because of the time, we'll have to end it. But further questions, yes,
I
as
can
soon as,
be emailed and I can answer them. If anybody
and,
wants, they can email me the questions and or WhatsApp me the questions, and I will try to give them answers.
and also the recording of this session will be available on our YouTube channel. So you can also put in your comments about your questions, and I'm sure ma'am can answer there too.
Definitely, definitely.
Anything that we have missed out, ma'am, and you would like to?
Oh, but there's so much to say.
I know.
And as I said, that when I did the art, you won't believe it was such a pleasure to do the art section, because I could find art from the most ancient 4,000 plus years. Then I could find art from different periods, even medieval period. People did not give up on the storytelling. And we have these manuscript stories of the Rajputs, who are telling us through painting as well as through writings the story of Mahabharata. And so I think the whole experience has been very, very enriching for me. And I wanted to put as much as possible tangible material for people to actually absorb and go have that curiosity to go and see. So, well, it can go on, because for me, Draupadi, and there are so many misperceptions. People say Draupadi is Panchal because she has 5 husbands. Oh, Gandhari is Gandhari because she's from the land of Gandhar. Panchali is Panchali because she's the princess of Panchal Desh, not because she had 5 husbands. So Panchal means 5 areas. Anchal. Many people mistake Panchal to be Punjab. Punjab is Ab. Ab means the riverbed. So land of 5 rivers. And that is the land of 5 areas. 5 tribes got together to create Panchal. And being the princess of Panchal, she was also called Panchali, but she's called Yagnasenini. So Yagnasenini means that she was born after a great 1-year tapasya by her father, and then a Havan, and then he was blessed with 2 children. So there are so many things to tell you all about, but I think time always has this constraint on us, and there can always be a question
I will
answer.
definitely be putting this recording as soon as possible on the YouTube, because this has so much of content, and I'm sure people will like to carry this conversation forward, will reach out to you, will obviously write their reviews as soon as they're through the book. They should mention the comments on they should definitely write the review. I mean, that is the biggest motivation for the authors. And thank you, Neeraji, for honoring us with your presence today,
And I'm
and
so
many,
happy
many
to see so
congratulations.
many people joining us, and I'm very grateful, and I'm sorry that we could not answer everybody's question, and I did too much of maybe talking. So thank you so very much. It was
Thank
a
you.
great
And
pleasure.
connecting with Mahabharata is a treasure house in itself. And thank you, Garuda Prakashan, for putting this session together. And please do subscribe to the channel, YouTube channel, Trends Literature Series. All the earlier author interactions are also there. And catch you up soon. And see you in
Seeing very
person.
interesting people joining. I'm so happy. Thank you so much for this effort.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Neeraj.